David.
Calen.
Good volume to that clap from Calen.
How are you still so bad at clapping, David?
You gotta have
It's
a little
just
bit
inconsistency. Sometimes I have the best clap on the show.
No, not often.
No,
I do sometimes though.
From New York, you are listening to Extra Time, driven by Continental from, my apartment in Brooklyn. I'm Andrew Reed with my partners in soccer, David Goss, Matt Doyle, Calen Carr. What's up, boys? How you feeling? I'm feeling a little vindictive, not going to lie. I'm feeling like, some of us might have done a Mount Rushmore thing and might have got roasted for it and put Alphonso Davies on it. No, why would you do that? How could you do that, Miguel Almiron? No, look at us now, baby. Champions League winners by proxy, all of us. We're not getting a ring. We're not getting the €1 million or whatever it is the Vancouver Whitecaps are getting. But we have sweet, sweet redemption on our side.
I'm putting it in my Wikipedia profile. I don't have one, but when I do, under honors, it's going to say 2020 UEFA Champions League winner.
But this is let's be serious for a second. This is why
I was being dead serious.
This is why we put him on Mount Rushmore, right? Because there are certain types of trailblazers or groundbreaking players that we have had in this league, and Marco Echeverri, the first best player that we had, is star from South America that was signed and kind of set the mold, and Landon Donovan for everything that he did for MLS and US soccer, and David Beckham for the obvious global implications. But Alphonso Davies, the global implications of being the best left back in the world at 19, starting and winning the Champions League at 19, an MLS homegrown player making that leap over the course of 18 months. This is what the argument was. And now people can still argue against it. People can say he didn't do enough in MLS to leave that kind of legacy. But I actually think he did. I actually think that this is going to set the stage for a lot more Alphonso Davies. And if you want to talk about what MLS is as a league and what MLS can be as a league, I do think that it has to angle more in the Alphonso Davies direction than the David Beckham direction. I do think that we have to prove that this is not a one-off or two-off, because Tyler Adams got to the semifinals of the Champions League as well. So it was huge. And sorry, I didn't mean to get sincere at the start of the show. I know this is usually for talking about Weeby's parenting habits and where Gassman got his latest batch of hummus. But anyway.
But also, let's not ignore the fact that not only did Alphonso Davies win a Champions League this weekend, but a current MLS player won the Europa League at the exact same time. Chicharito helping build one of the greatest leagues in the world, as Doyle said. It's never ending.
Yeah.
Just a cycle of success. I wanted to gloat. Calen, how do you feel about this? As we receive the abuse, and I know your Twitter drafts are often
I think
unsaid,
that Calen
but spectacular.
Oddly took some of the most heat for this because no one expected Calen to do it. I felt like people felt more let down by Calen's decision to go with us on this because they thought Calen would be the voice of reason.
I think I was leading the charge, actually.
You were, yeah.
Yeah.
You absolutely were.
And I think that's why I got as much heat as I did. But look, I would say even in my expectations, which for him were to be one of the best left backs in the world and to be, I said, what if he eventually goes on and wins the Champions League, right? And that could be in the next 5 years or so. But to see his development as quick as it has happened, and to see his performance and, what we saw him do in not just going on and sort of going along for the ride to the Champions League title, but really to play an important role in weaponizing that left-hand side and what he did, in that moment against Barcelona and Semedo, but kind of throughout these last several months and months of play. It's been consistent. Even in the final, he didn't have the best match necessarily compared to sort of the bar that he set for himself. But even still, he gets the cross that Lewandowski puts off the post. He has an important clearance late. He shows composure, dropping it back. And just, he managed the game with a yellow card for a long stretch for really most of the game. So he's immediately first player on the team sheet. I believe on CBS afterwards, they were saying he was the young player in Europe right now. And so I think if you look at his trajectory and where he's already gone, and now you look at where he can go in the future, I feel good. I feel like we have been vindicated in some ways. Now you might want to just have your Mount Rushmore and you look at it as, only for performances in MLS, but that's not the way we approached it. And I think what Alphonso Davies is doing for the reputation of MLS globally, for the Vancouver Whitecaps and for the domestic North American player is it really can't be understated, the impact that he's had.
And I'm just going to give you a little anecdote about this. I do this video series breaking down greats from MLS, and we opened the series is called MLS Game Breakers. We opened the series with a video on Alphonso Davies and showed how, as a winger in MLS, if you were watching closely, you could see that his skills would translate to being like a modern attacking fullback at a possession-heavy side. And I tweeted that out yesterday. And of course, the response, because it is codified now that Alphonso Davies is one of the great young players in the world, the response was, positive and global and all of that. But then I responded to it with a video I made in the same series of Diego Rossi. And the tweet was something to the effect of, if you're looking for the next great young player to come from MLS and go to a big European league and make a splash, you probably want to look in downtown LA, because this guy is legit. And I was really curious to see how people would respond to that, because I've been in this job 10 years. Euro snobs tend to take any chance they can get to say MLS players are a joke, MLS players are trash, this league is a joke, blah, 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 blah. The response was uniformly like, oh, we got to get on this guy. We look at all the players who are coming from here, whether it's Almiron or Adams or, obviously Davies, or guys who came from the academies like Reyna and Weston McKennie without ever playing in MLS. The response is night and day compared to 2 or 3 years ago. So I just think anecdotally, combined with the fact that very obviously the best teams in the world are now monitoring MLS players and shopping in MLS, it feels like a corner has been turned here. And there aren't many more powerful images than Alphonso Davies with that big smile holding up a UEFA Champions League trophy.
Just last piece to follow off that, we're going to talk to Felipe Cardenas in a little bit about players and coaches choosing to come to this league, some of the best in the world, and doing it over other options, not as a last option, not because they have to. I think we have turned a corner a little while ago with players and now with coaches. The last one is the fan perception.
Yeah.
Because PT Martinez is happy to come to this league. Christian Pavone is happy to come to this league. That was the best player at the 2018 World Cup for Argentina in the middle of his career. Guys are happy to come, and now you get Matias Almeida, and you get Diego Alonso. Okay, fine, whatever. Forget it. But he was great.
Yeah, he was really good, but come on now.
All of that is different than what we could talk about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely 15 years ago. And then I think that the part that Doyle's talking about is that last piece, and that's what these guys have the potential to do is, oh, you vote for one, you root for one of the 8 teams in the world that everyone roots for, because there's literally only 8 teams. Well, the guy that plays for them that you like plays in this league and is good. So that is that next stage, and that's what this potential has.
Yeah, it's about pride, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, for a lot of us watching Alphonso Davies from the age that he was coming in, being managed, they took it slow in Vancouver, relatively speaking, despite his age. And then to see him sort of blossom like this, you have to be proud and you have to celebrate that. And that's why we're sort of driving it home every time we get the opportunity, because it's special, because we haven't seen this before, and because we don't know when we might again. But I think that, as you guys have said, that kind of groundswell tells us that we will see more moments, maybe not exactly like this, but moments that we should all be proud of to be a part of with North American soccer. And look, it's bigger than this now. It's Babel Reynoso coming to Minnesota. He's on a plane. He's in the airport. It's Cecilio Dominguez signing as a first DP at 26 for Austin FC, and those moves not being something that we would lead the show with, not being something that we would.
People are questioning this Dominguez signing. Like, is he good enough? Blah, blah, blah. If Cecilio Dominguez or that profile player had signed with the team whatever years ago, it would have been like, whoa, I cannot believe this happened. Now people are like, is he good enough? He's not a South American player of the year. He's not a World Cup player. And you're like, whoa, what world do we live in?
Can I just say one other thing? Because, I mean, I think part of it is just this shift to participating in the global market. Because a part of me does wonder if Tyler Adams in the past would have still been on the bench in some MLS roster or fighting for time, which sounds crazy to say, or Alphonso Davies would still be led along a little bit slower. And I think, like, if you go back, I looked at Nagbe's incredible goal, and then I went back to, when was that other one what he did? And he was 2011. He was 21 years old. You score a goal like that anywhere in the world, and you also look at his qualities. I mean, he's getting sold for big money right then, but that was a different league at the time. And yeah, in some ways, we still are sort of questioning ourselves, where it's the same thing you guys are talking about, where, you know, it goes on social media and people, you know, on the comments on Sky Sports News are like, well, it's MLS, it's MLS, it's MLS. And you're like, all right, like, whatever. But like, it somehow takes this, that's why the Davies things, it takes it to be seen at that other place to, in some ways, make it real for some people, and to understand and to see how Lewandowski or how Neymar, how Mbappe, how they treat him, or they sort of play alongside him in the case of Bayern. So, I mean, there's been quality like this for coming through MLS. Now, maybe Davies is, you know, super, super special, but I think, you know, there are players where they just haven't gotten either that move, or they haven't gotten that opportunity, or when it's come, it's been later on in their careers. So the shift to playing, you know, to your guys' point for so long, to play your kids, it's. I
knew I'd get him. That's
hey, man.
About
mic drop. 2020, it's happened, but it's fantastic. And but yeah, I think, man, it was just so fun. I can't underestimate or understate how fun it was to watch him on this run.
What an MLS therapy session we just got out of this. Let's go, Alphonso.
We're talking about pioneers here. I mean, ultimately, when you went through our Mount Rushmore, all those guys are pioneers. You know, Marco Echeverri deciding to continue his career in Major League Soccer when most people probably thought, what are you doing? David Beckham choosing to come, Landon Donovan staying, and you could argue that was his own personal choice, whatever, but he was a pioneer. I mean, Alphonso Davies is that next sort of generation, and we need a lot more of those to sort of prove that pipeline. And that's why when we talk to Paul Tenorio and we talk on this show and we say, play your kids, and we hope and we wish that a guy like Brendan Aronson gets a shot in Europe. And we hope that we wish that, you know, a Paxton Pomykal gets there, because we want to see how they'll do and how they'll affect the next Paxton Aronson. You know, that was just that just came together well, but the next generation of players. Let's talk about the games. That was fun. I had a great time watching Bayern win. And watching him celebrate. And I think Alphonso Davies is like an international star for years to come, not just as a soccer player, honestly, as a person.
Drake followed him. So
as a person, I mean, this dude is like he's like a pop culture icon. TikTok, he just jumped on Twitter and he probably has 2 million followers in like the first morning he's on the platform. So congratulations to Fonzie. We're trying to get him on the show. We'll see if we can make it happen. We've been working on that one for about a year. So TBD on that. Let's talk El Trafico. Ethan Zubak. What did I tell you? Read my columns. I knew it was going to be him, baby. First MLS goal. No Chicharito. Who cares? Here comes the homegrown with a dunk header on 0 markers. LAFC lose 2-0. They lose Carlos Vela to injury. Guillermo Barrichelotto has what seems to be a very competent game plan that doesn't involve a million crosses. This game was brutally hot, and it was surprising in a lot of ways, Doyle, but this was a massive result for the Galaxy. You saw it in the quotes afterwards. You saw it in the way they treated this game. You will see it, I think, in the way that they perform going forward, because something seems to have shifted. I mean, Sebastian Lletget after this came out and said, we hope, I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head right now, but he basically said, like, we wanted to rub it in on them a little bit. Like, which is beautiful. That's rivalry 101.
Derby 101, I think.
Sorry,
I mean, hyper authentic.
Hyper authentic Derby 101.
I look, they did rub it in a little bit. I still think that, you know, it's like, let's settle down and not read too much into this. Like, let's not go that narrative.
No, celebrate. Let's go. Get jacked up. Ethan Zubak.
Absolutely celebrate. Like, Galaxy fans have been certainly celebrating for the past 48 hours since that game, and they have every right to, because they comprehensively outplayed LAFC, and I thought that Schelotto outcoached Bob Bradley. And then for the first time in a long time, the Galaxy looked like they had a plan and they knew what to do. And a lot of it came from just simplifying and lining up in really a 4-5-1. And they had Julian Araujo, as a right winger, but really as more of an old-fashioned right midfielder, and that he wasn't going to cut inside. He wasn't going to be goal dangerous. He was just going to stay wide and try to get behind Diego Palacios, which he did at will. And then on the other side of the ball, he became like a fourth central midfielder. He slid inside anytime LAFC were trying to build through central midfield. He was sliding inside to make the numbers game 4-3 Galaxy. Because last time in Orlando, the Galaxy just cut right through them. They just absolutely dominated that space. So Schelotto said, all right, we're going to win the numbers game. We're going to turn them over, and then we're going to hit into the space behind those LAFC fullbacks, because LAFC were taking wild risks. Like, you could push your fullbacks up if you're dominating possession. If you have all that kind of attacking possession, then bring those fullbacks up and overwhelm teams. But if you're doing that while you're turning the ball over in central midfield, you are going to be in big trouble. And that was the Galaxy's game plan, and it worked perfectly. And unlike every other El Trafico, this one was like, as soon as it got to 2-0, it was over. Like, there was no comeback happening for LAFC because they just couldn't figure out a way through. And I think that is the biggest takeaway for the Galaxy, I think.
I 100% agree with what Doyle said. And I thought the first half is what you take from the Galaxy is how well they played toe-to-toe. Second goal, Vela gets hurt 2 minutes later after they'd already made the subs. Some of that goes into the, this game's over and they're not coming back. But the first half is where the Galaxy came out and I think went toe-to-toe and they had more energy. And that's something that you don't often see. I think the first game at Bank of California is really the only time I've ever seen the Galaxy come out on the front foot against LAFC and be more ready for the matchup. And so that was impressive alone, just culturally, of just saying, what happened in Orlando isn't who we are and isn't acceptable. And I thought Dennis DeClosa coming on our show last week and the language he used, I thought was a little strong. You have a coach out there people are questioning, and he came on and was like, this isn't good enough. This isn't what we do. This isn't acceptable. And I think it trickled down all the way through. And I agree with what Doyle said. I think it's the best game we've seen Schelotto put together. And you didn't have Jonathan Dos Santos and you didn't have Chicharito, and you're not starting Giancarlo Gonzalez. There are a bunch of question marks around that team, and they didn't play that way. I thought it was the best I've seen Sebastian Lletget play in 2 years. And it was kind of the role that you can envision when we talked about him with the national team. Pseudo 10 who can go wide and connect with guys and fill in when Christian Pavone comes inside, a la Pulisic, and what you could see with the national team. I thought all of that was awesome. And Julian Araujo just randomly starting a fight and getting jacked up in the corner. And Mark Anthony Kaye's like, relax. And he wouldn't. I was like, this might be my favorite player in MLS now. So I'm all here for Julian Araujo.
Kaylin, you're always on the sort of big players, best players win games. And that's Christian Pavone right now for the Galaxy. When you watch him in LA, what do you see?
Well, if you look at the second goal too, I mean, he creates that one where he kind of bumps it off Zubac, comes inside, and then LAFC gets a little bit, what?
That is the best way to term what Ethan Zubac does on the field for this team. Is Pavone uses him as a wall.
Yeah, but I mean,
but you're right.
That's what Chicharito is going to do. Mm-hmm. And Chicharito doesn't give you a lot more than that either. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to turn and face up and beat a guy one-on-one. But that's where I found some hope actually for the Galaxy was once Jonah came on the field in the last bits, how important he is even just for possession and really how it looked like LAFC wasn't able to threaten. And then you add Chicharito to the mix. But yeah, Pavone, he plays it wide and he creates kind of a numerical advantage, or it condenses the field in the middle. Then that allows Araujo to go out wide. And then the run comes in on the backside for Sebastian Lletget there. So look, this Galaxy team looked done. I mean, they looked to me like this was a lost season almost. I mean, it's hard to say because it's been such a strange season, but the way they started the year to the way they went to the MLS's back tournament in Orlando, and now almost in one game, you're looking at it and you're saying, we might have been wrong about this. And there's still a lot of quality on the team. It just looked like they didn't really know how they wanted to use it or how they wanted to play. and then you plug in Jonah, and Chicharito, and you're starting to look at a team that I think has at least a foundation to go. And I would say Depoy.
Depew.
Yeah,
that's what I was about to say.
He was over. Sometimes it's not the biggest name guy coming in, but he looked good enough to keep his spot. So I would like to see that back line continue as it was, because it at least looked organized to me. And yes, LAFC had an off day, and I'd expect them to bounce back, but the Galaxy showed something for sure, because 6-2, they showed some response.
No catastrophic individual errors from your central defenders does tend to help.
Yeah, and you want to see some accountability. And I think he got dropped the last game of MLS's back tournament too, but that sends a message to the locker room to say,
yep,
I don't care who you are, like, give it, a kid from, I think, where did Depew go? Santa Barbara?
UCSB.
Yeah. Put him in, give him a chance. That'll do something for the locker room to understand, like, at least we got to have some accountability within the group.
We also have to give credit, we've kind of knocked, and deservedly, LA Galaxy have not used LA2 as well as other teams in MLS have used their USL setup. And they were the first ones to do it. And I think a lot of that falls on Bruce Arena being the original guy and not really being his level of interest, and it kind of being a mess since then. But he's more of an Aaron Long story of, he came out of college as a center forward, played a little center back, bounced around. They gave him a ton of time at that position in their USL team. And I'm not saying he's a national team level center back, but he is a massive part of what fixed for them over the last 2 games defensively and maybe going forward. And that's credit to them sticking with him and giving that player a shot.
And Zubac also comes from he's played in USL and scored goals. And his qualities, that yes, he's not comparable to Chicharito, but the way he plays, I see why they're giving him the start, because it's just energy, it's effort, it's working,
It's that he's the only other forward on the roster, so process of elimination.
But his qualities mirror the system that they're going to play with Chicharito. So you could see some of those things, whether it's in the air, even the goalie scores, being alert in the box. I mean, he has at least some of those same qualities. So
who would have thought that after this El Trafico and the return of Carlos Vela, after not seeing him for months, that we would spend 10 minutes fawning over the LA Galaxy, who looked basically inept, who looked like their roster build was shambolic, who looked like, as you said, Calen, this might be a wasted year. And here we are 10 minutes in talking about Carlos Vela going off injured, and Bob Bradley says he thinks it's an MCL, which that's not something that anybody wants to hear if you're a neutral. Maybe if you're in the Western Conference and you don't want to take on Carlos Vela anymore. I mean, what happened to LAFC in this game? Why is Bob Bradley after this match coming out saying, I'm going to take the heat for this, but this is basically as bad as I've seen our guys play? It's just nowhere near good enough. Not only that, you lose your best player and the best player in the league.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. One was them just not being ready. Like, you could see mentally they were, physically they were second to every ball.
Is that the heat? Did they let the heat get in? Like,
that's not an excuse, because the Galaxy were playing in the heat too.
I know, I understand that, but is it like, is that the mental softness aspect of like, dang, it's hot? Like,
I think they thought the Galaxy were going to lay down and die.
Yeah,
because the Galaxy basically laid down and died last month. No, they did.
Well, they're saying it's 6-2, right? They're going. Their last game is 6-2, and then you're bringing back Vela. And so you're looking at the side and you're like, well, whatever. Like, even when in the game where the Galaxy went up, then it's like, yeah, it comes back and our quality will show. But they just kept waiting and waiting. And even at the water break, Bob's like, all right, we're going to kick into gear. We're going to kick into gear. And it just goes to show that, this LAFC team isn't just, I don't think any team can just wait forever to kick into gear and try and find their way back into a match and just click. Things can click, especially when you don't have Vela at full fitness and reintegrating into the team. So it was, I think they just waited too long.
They also were down to Houston in the first game of the MLS's back tournament, and they started really poorly the first 55, 60 minutes of that game. So we've seen that, but the Galaxy were more efficient as well as more organized to hold it. But it's an issue for LAFC. If Vela's out, it's really interesting because he started, and I don't know if he looked even close to ready.
No.
But I wouldn't question LAFC because they handle these things really well. I mean, from top to bottom as a club, they're professional in the medical analytics, coaching, how they're analyzing a move like that. But he looked so physically uncomfortable before the injury. Like, he cut one guy one time, but it looked like he was running on water and or on ice and so uncomfortable. And none of it worked up top because then Rossi was center forward and he was lost in the game. You had no threat from Vela coming off that wing. Rodriguez didn't really do much. You don't have Atuesta at the back. And to Doyle's point, Galaxy were able to stop up midfield. Diego Palacios didn't look good getting forward, and Tristan Blackman doesn't really get forward. And you saw the moves at halftime from Bob to try and get more into the attack, to push Blessing to right back and try and get some width and things like that. So maybe if Vela's out, it even simplifies it for them. DWP's going to start. They don't even have Diamande. And those two guys have to play outside like you did in Orlando. And I thought Rodriguez stepped up to that test most of the tournament.
Everything seemed to work for LAFC during their time in MLS. The one place you might look right now and say, oh, that's a weakness is center back. Letting Walker Zimmerman go, relying on Blackman. Like Eddie Segura's been great, but the rotating cast of characters outside of Zimmerman and sometimes Blackman hasn't been the best. This is a big loss for LAFC. They've got to bounce back. It was a big win for Atlanta United. And Pity Martinez, speaking of walking on water, kind of looked like he was walking on water. Like he was, this was a different kind of player. Frank de Boer's gone, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to chop up Walker Zimmerman and make him look silly. You know what? I am going to uncork this left-footed Golazo late in the game just because I am going to make it 2-0. And then, of course, Gary Smith's like, look, I thought we were great, but we didn't have a difference maker. And I'm like, yeah, bro, that's like the whole thing. That's like the point, right? Like somebody in the final third has to be able to do literally anything. Like that's the game of soccer, score some goals. This is the South American Player of the Year. Is it that simple? Was it that good for Atlanta United? We'll get Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic on in just a second to walk us through everything that's happened with that club. But is this it? Like you just make Pity happy and you'll probably get more wins?
I mean, yeah, this was the word I kept, or the phrase I kept using last year when they started winning was like they just have enough talent to brute force some wins, even when they don't play well. If you have, $45 million worth of attackers in your front three, you're probably going to win more games in MLS than the other guys. Now they're down to only one of those front three, but he showed up in a really big way. Atlanta didn't play well. Nashville, I thought, had the better of the game, the better of the chances. They just didn't have that guy. And that's on either Gary Smith in the front office to say, okay, we're going to develop Daniel Rios or Abu Danladi, or it's on the front office and the ownership to go out and get that guy. Now, it doesn't have to be a $15 million player, but it has to be someone, because at this point, if you look at the way Nashville have played, the back six works. The goalkeeping is good enough. I do like a lot of what I've seen from Leal and Mukhtar. They don't have anybody who put the ball in the net. They just don't. And that's why they're getting, 1 point when they should get 3, or 0 points when they should get 1.
Before we get to Felipe and go through all the different particulars with Atlanta United, Calen, what is good Pity Martinez in MLS? Like, what can he be?
Well, I'm beginning to rethink that. And yeah, I would say, look, I thought Doyle did a good job breaking down his positional shift, and I think putting him out wide is a better spot for him, because you're putting him in spots where he's going to get isolated and you're going to get him moving. And I think kind of the way we've seen Bob Bradley use Carlos Vela is a pretty good mold of they try to get Carlos in spots that he likes and get him on the move, running with the ball at his feet. And if Atlanta United can do something similar where they get PD on that left flank in space with the ball is being supplied to him where he is running at pace, he's a lot to handle in that situation. We saw what happened with him and Walker Zimmerman there. And then I do think there is the other part of it that is psychological, because I think he has gone through a tough time with the expectations, the shift of being in a new environment, the league. And he's just looked so frustrated throughout his time in MLS, where it's been weighing on his head. And I think sometimes a manager can play a big role in that. And yes, he even said you have to take responsibility for you're not always going to like your coach, but some players need a little bit of love, and they need that feeling around. And sometimes that coach being gone and just being that person every day in the locker room, I mean, it can really change your mentality as to how you go out in the field. And then when you get off to a good start like this, I think it's something you can build on. So because look, that strike on the second goal is, and that's confident. And then same thing with the one-on-one. He thrives off confidence players like that he is a player that relies on confidence. It's not just his speed, or it's not just his other attributes. It needs to have that little extra X factor of feeling good about yourself.
And I would just say the second goal from PT is what Atlanta's done. They play out of a good position, I would argue. Mo Adams plays back out on top of the box, and PT's had shots from outside the box over the last year and a half. But he felt good coming off the first goal. He feels happy in training over the last week, and he hits this one. He didn't do it under Frank de Boer, and it could be as simple as that. And I would argue PT's always said the right thing about it's on him. But to Calen's point, that doesn't mean he knows how to fix it. And this might just do it.
All right, let's go behind the scenes with Atlanta United with Felipe Cardenas. You probably read him at The Athletic. He is on top of all of this stuff. And we just got done talking about the hyper-authentic Angel City Derby, LA Clasico rivalry Super Bowl, Felipe. So I just want you to know that your piece still has stuck in our brains about
free rent up here, Felipe.
So
when we found out you were coming on, I was like, what? I hate Felipe.
What is wrong? Why can't you say? You just said El Trafico, by the way.
I just said, I only say it when I have to, when I'm forced to. No, I mean, the piece, that was a great piece to write. It's fun to write. And I put it in there. It's like, as a Spanish speaker, as a bicultural Spanish speaker, I struggle with it. I get it. I get what it means. I get where it comes from. But it's just, it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't do enough for me. But I think it's going to last. I think that's going to be the name. So whether LAFC likes it or not, I think they're going to have to live with it.
All right, let's have a hyper-authentic conversation about Atlanta United. I'm sorry, I just can't resist, man. I can't resist. It seems like everybody's feeling light and free in Five Stripes these days. Pity Martinez is skipping around the field, tearing guys up 1v1, scoring bangers. I mean, is this truly a Frank de Boer is gone effect?
I think it has a lot to do with it. I mean, and after speaking with him and over the last week, I got the sense that even he perhaps understood that it was getting bad. But at the same time, what I really took away from that interview with Frank de Boer is that there's a sense to him that he could fix it. He could fix it no matter what. He wasn't really that at fault. And so, but if you look at the match from Saturday night, you can see a team that looks a little bit looser. And going through the week of practice under Stephen Glass, when we spoke to the players, they really doubled down on the fact that there's a lot more communication. There's a lot more clarity, both tactically and just personally, individually, what roles people have. There's a positive sense of environment around that club right now. And so clearly the change in manager was needed.
What were they bucking against with Frank de Boer? I mean, it just seemed like close to the very start, you were seeing LGP come out and say things at the All-Star game. You were seeing the reactions of Joseph Martinez on the bench. It just didn't fit from the start. What was off?
I think what PT Martinez said on Thursday to us via Zoom is that he was asked about his relationship with Frank de Boer, and he said, no, it's not that it was complex. We had a difference of opinion, and it really stemmed from the field. It was a tactical thing. It was an ideological battle between the manager and the players. Now, I think what's really important is that the players, like you mentioned, LGP, Joseph, Martinez, players that came to MLS, came to Atlanta United, clearly they understood they were playing for Tata Martino at the time, but they came and committed to winning. They weren't here to just like kind of chill and see what happens. They committed to an identity. They established an identity, and then they won. And then all of a sudden the club just flips it. And I think last year, now we know that it was almost like a cry for help. They were telling us reporters that we're not happy. This is not going to end well. We're not playing well. And there was a clash really tactically. And when PT Martinez went on Argentine radio last year, he didn't disparage Frank de Boer. He even said in the interview with Fox Argentina, like, I respect him as a coach. We just aren't the type of team that can sit at the midfield stripe and wait to be attacked. So right away, you knew that it was tactical. And going back to what LGP and Joseph said, I think after the Columbus loss in Orlando at the MLS's back tournament, we have Brad Guzan, the captain of this team, a U.S. international, really going off on everything, on the environment around the club, on players needing to step up, on communication not being there. And it really reminded me of what happened last season and the way that when these other players, this established South American players kind of came out in the media everything blew up. When Brad Guzan came out and said it after Columbus, it was as if, okay, like clearly this has gotten toxic.
So when you look at this team this week, you mentioned being at training, Stephen Glass, what he's going to bring as interim. What's the short-term and long-term future? What is 2020 supposed to look like for Atlanta? And then big picture, what's the process of trying to, I guess, rebuild that identity?
Well, the president, Darren Eales, told us a few weeks back that they're looking for a permanent manager. So that search is going to go on regardless of what Stephen Glass does with the team. At the same time, I think they're very lucky. Atlanta United is very lucky to have a manager like Stephen Glass in-house that started with the academy, went up to Atlanta United 2, and now is the caretaker of this first team. So I think for now, it's going to be Stephen Glass's team. It's his opportunity really to take advantage of this. And the players throughout the week, both Fernando Mesa and Pizzi Martinez, both mentioned Stephen Glass. They spoke very highly of him. Fernando Mesa actually said, we hope he does well so that he can continue to coach us. So it's really interesting. Sunday, Bayern Munich wins the Champions League with Hansi Flick. He was a caretaker manager at one point for that club. He comes in, replaces Niko Kovac, who struggled to be the successor to a very important coach in club history in Jupp Heynckes. Kovac alienates star players, plays conservatively, wins a title, eventually gets sacked. Hansi Flick takes on the team, and now look at what's happening with Bayern Munich. So I think it's a lesson for Atlanta United. They can see this, and Stephen Glass as well. His staff must be pretty jacked up right now that they're in charge of a pretty good team with everything to prove. I don't want to say nothing to lose, because now with Atlanta United, like, results really do matter. The way they play matters. But I think for now, the club is going to be patient. I think they will be patient. I know they are talking to managers. They're out there talking, but they have a process. We won't know probably until 2021 what the decision will be on the touchline.
So the expectations at the club, I mean, it's the fans, it's the supporters, but it's also Darren Eales. It's also Carlos Bocanegra. It's ownership. I mean, they've been set sky high. It's the results themselves. This, I think you can look at, and maybe you disagree, but was just a bad decision Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra made to bring in Frank de Boer. It just didn't work. Is there pressure on them? Do you get the feeling that there is like, hey, you have to get this next hire right to get us back to where we expect to be? Or have they earned sort of a grace period and sort of a, hey, mulligan that one, go get the right guy now, no real pressure?
I think there's pressure, and yes, they have a lot of equity here in Atlanta and around the league as well, because of the success that Atlanta United had in 2 years, the fact that they were able to bring a top-class manager to Atlanta, to MLS, big players. That was also in part to, having Tata Martino on the bench, but big players came. They were very successful. They established an identity. Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra were part of that process. They were also a big part of the process of bringing in Frank de Boer and essentially flipping everything on its head, when clearly the style of play, the personnel that was in that locker room was intact. And so, yes, I think there is pressure on Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra just because of what you mentioned. Like, there are high expectations in this club. I don't think Atlanta gets mulligans. Atlanta United does not get years that they get to take off, regardless of this wild year that is 2020 because of COVID. I think they just need to, when they look back on this year, they should be able to say, we fixed it. We made the right hire, or we stuck with Stephen Glass, whatever it may be, but we've changed. We've gone back to what we know is working. And I think that's, Darren Eales, when he spoke with us last week, he didn't go as far as saying, we made a mistake, but clearly he understands that there was something that was working. There was something that the fans had engaged with, which was an established style of play, an attacking style of play. It's what you're seeing from LAFC. And I think that if I were Carlos Bocanegra or Darren Eales, or perhaps even Arthur Blank, I think there's concern because there are bigger clubs that are catching up, or at least at this point, maybe even sprinting past Atlanta United. And so now with the revamp in that roster, I think in speaking with Frank de Boer, he felt handcuffed because a lot of big players left. He was still expected to deliver. And I don't think the personnel was there for him to do that.
One piece of the personnel, though, is PT. And you talk about LAFC, you talk about anyone. There are some players in this league we all tune in just to watch. And unless you're a fan of the rival, you want to see them play well. PT has that ability. His signing was a major moment, I still think, in MLS history. We haven't seen it. Then he balls out this weekend. You mentioned seeing him in training. I know you're always the first question in a PT scrum, and he always smiles at you and then hates me and whoever else asks a question when we're there. What does PT Martinez need? And how does this end well now? Like, what is his tenure at Atlanta United in a positive way?
It's an excellent question, because I think just PT Martinez in MLS, PT Martinez in Atlanta is so fascinating to me. Just the whole concept of it, the fact that he is extremely famous in Argentina. Let's not forget that. Okay, in 2018, he was a South American Player of the Year, and no, it's not a comparison with Lionel Messi. We're not doing that. But as far as just like a pop culture type of status within that country, a football mad country, a crazy country when it comes to soccer, PT Martinez was up there. He was the top player on every news channel, every radio show, every TV show, and he was delivering on a team that really captivated the continent. So let's not forget that. Then he comes here expecting to play for Tata Martino. That's another big, nugget that we often forget. And at the time, he's probably watching Atlanta United saying, yeah, I like how they play. They play like us. They play like River. They're attacking. They're 1v1. They're high up the pitch and they're scoring goals. So what is the story going to be? I think what we saw on Saturday is a player that clearly is capable of dominating matches in this game. And it's not, well, I'll go back, not necessarily dominating, but delivering in big matches, because that's what he has done always for River Plate. He struggled there. Chicharito tested him, challenged him mentally, tactically, and then he fell into that team. And I think he had a role that was very important, a very Carlos Vela type role for River, where he's not involved in that midfield press and that counter press. He's kind of on the outskirts hanging out. And then when they break, it's PT. That's what was so great about River Plate. And then he would deliver in big games. And so Stephen Glass, one of the first things he tells us last week is that I went back and watched River Plate matches. So clearly he's doing his homework. And that was something that lack of attention to detail, the lack of being prepared for an opponent, I think that was another thing that Frank de Boer, he just wasn't doing. And that was the sense we were getting from players, that they didn't feel prepared. And so now with Stephen Glass doing the homework, knowing the type of player that he has in PT Martinez, I think he will break out. Now, what does that mean for PT though? What is a breakout for a player like PT Martinez that has such high expectations, lofty expectations? I think it's just consistency. He just hasn't been consistent in MLS. So he needs to have the type of game that he had on Saturday. It's not every game he's scoring 2 goals, but every game he should be a focal point of the attack. He should be a difference maker, and teams should be scouting and preparing to match up against PT.
I want to step away from Atlanta real quick. Sorry, Weavy. But you have your pulse on what's going on in South America. You talk about PT Martinez. It hits me that Bebo Reynoso signing 5 years ago in MLS would be the only thing we talked about. And we had Dennis Teclosa on last Thursday, and he's talking about Christian Pavone. And there's moments where I can't believe he's in this league. Cecilio Dominguez signing as well today at 26 years old. Something has changed in MLS. When you listen to coverage of it in South America, when you listen to the players choosing to come here or talking about rumors here, what's changed? What do you see in that new relationship where South American prime players, big time players, choose to come here instead of Europe or instead of staying at a River?
I think they know the players. I think the players are starting to understand that MLS can be a showcase for them, and they don't have to necessarily just jump straight away to Europe. That's still the ultimate goal. And I think in South America, that is still happening all the time. That's why some of the domestic leagues have gotten weaker, because the second a player is identified as having potential, he's gone. He's 18, 19, and he's out of there. So leagues like in Colombia, even Argentina and Brazil, they're not as strong as they used to be. There's tons of talent, but they look top heavy once again, where the big clubs are still able to, fund themselves, have an academy, and compete. I think the stigma exists still. I spoke with Sebastian Blanco last week for another story I'm going to do, and we talked about that. When he was leaving, he went back to San Lorenzo after going to Ukraine and the EPL, and he goes back to San Lorenzo. And there was a sense that he's coming to a league that he understood. He wanted to be here, but still in Argentina, it's like, why are you going to America? And that was the case with PT Martinez just 2 years ago. So I think it still exists. I think from internally at clubs in South America, they know that MLS is good business. I heard Paul Tenorio, my colleague on your show last week, and they see an MLS club coming in, and they see dollar signs. I think they see that these guys really want our players. It's big business for the South American clubs, but the talent will continue to go. I think it's a matter of MLS teams not just thinking I can go to South America and find players. They need to find the right player. They need to have a style of play, an identity, and identify players that fit that role. Pavon, to your point, sometimes I can't believe he's here either. He's an excellent player. He was the best player at Boca Juniors when PT was the South American Player of the Year. He was a starter for Argentina at a World Cup. He had some injuries and he ends up here, but everyone knows, even Zlatan said it himself. He's like, this guy should not be in this league. He won't last very long. But I think those types of players, even a Pavon, even a Rossi, Christian Espinosa from San Jose, those are the types of profiles that I think MLS clubs are looking at and saying, we can use a guy like that, play him across the front three, the mentality, the experience, the passion that they bring over to MLS. I think that will continue.
We're talking players with Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic here, but I want to finish you on this one. And it's head coaches, because it's not just players coming. It's Tata, it's Almeida, it's Guillermo Barcelotto, it's Diego Alonso. Like, there's also an attraction for managers in this league that may not have been there before. And I expect that same sort of attraction to be something with Atlanta United. I mean, you have Ezequiel Barco, you have Pitti, you have, of course, Joseph Martinez, and this experienced squad and a ownership group that has said, not only are we willing to spend, we will spend. They're well known in South America. Who do you think will bring the best from this team, or could? What are some of the names that are floating around out there? What's your feeling as far as where Atlanta might go with this head coaching position?
So I've said it even before they hired Frank de Boer that I thought they had to go back to South America and at least really study the candidates in that region because of the makeup of the team, the style, the culture of the team, the way that the players at Atlanta United live and breathe the sport. That's really important to understand. It's not just they have a few South Americans. Every team in MLS has South Americans on their roster. I think in Atlanta, because they're young and they really banked their success on these types of players, well, then that's where the culture, that's where that identity comes to mind. So I think managers that understand that, I think it is a high profile job, to your point, Andrew. I think it is a high profile job in this hemisphere because they've won. Tata Martino came here, left a mark, moved on to a big international job with Mexico. So I think, and this is what I said before they hired Frank de Boer, I think a guy like Gabriel Heinze, who is passionate, a tactician, a strategic type of coach, a coach that knows how to mix veteran players with young academy players and sell them off. But at the same time, is a disciplinarian. I think this team is a team that wants that. I feel like the players want to be tested, want to be challenged every day, want to know that their coach has their back and that every time they step on the field, they have a chance of winning. So Heinze is one guy that I think would be a great hire. Gabriel Milito, who was interviewed for this position along with GBS and Frank de Boer before Atlanta ultimately landed on Frank de Boer, is another guy that is, had experience in South America. He essentially gave Ezequiel Barco his debut at Independiente. Ezequiel Barco has spoken highly about Gabriel Milito to me, telling me that his passion and the way he wanted the team to play was contagious. And I think that's what these players want. So those are two young options. I think the Tata Martino profile is out there as well. There's Ariel Holan, who is right now at Universidad Católica in Chile, previously with Independiente, a more experienced type of manager. Depending on what report you read, is he a man manager or not? I'm not sure yet. I don't know, but he's well respected. Gustavo Alfaro, who was the last manager with with Boca Juniors, currently available, currently strongly linked to the vacant Ecuador national team job as well, which, by the way, just a few weeks ago, Guillermo Barros Escalota was also linked to that job. So, I think the region is paying attention to the types of managers that are coming to MLS. Atlanta, they, like I said at the beginning, they may stick with Stephen Glass. We don't know that. They might see that we have a good thing going. They give him another year and the team really takes off. But there are coaching candidates out there. There are available coaches both in Mexico and South America that I think would be nice fits for this club. No
matter what happens, we know Atlanta United, they make news. Felipe Cardenas is covering at The Athletic. Follow his coverage. It's awesome. Thank you so much, Felipe. I know you spark a lot of conversations on this show with your reporting. Thanks for dropping by, man.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, big thanks to Felipe. A lot of insight there, a lot of names for you to remember. And Wiki, if you don't know them, you should probably know a lot of those. Some of them are Champions League winners, after all. What do we think? What should Atlanta do? What can they do? I mean, I look at what's happened here, and I do think there has to be a not insignificant amount of pressure on Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra, and that's really of their own doing. Their success off the jump, their ability to attract Tata, the fact that they won titles and said, this is who we are, this is who we're going to be, MLS chase us. And then they made the wrong decision. I mean, it was the wrong decision. Like, you can't spin it any other way than that when you let your coach go after a year and a half and you paid him a lot of money to come and he was a big name. So now what? What happens?
So I just think there's there's multiple elements, but one of the things is Frank de Boer won trophies. Like, there was some level of success. Tata Martino was entertaining and fun. Whether he won or not, everyone enjoyed going to those games. Everyone enjoyed the experience. And I think that built the culture in the club and around the city. And so they have to look at what are the players and the fans going to enjoy alongside what wins. Because I would argue that if they were taking guys 1v1, the crowd got on their feet, the games were still fun, there was energy in the building, what Frank de Boer did from a results point of view would be good enough.
Yep.
So you have to look at that. And I think Felipe talking about these South American managers, location doesn't matter. Everyone has their own soccer culture, their own ideas. They could be from anywhere. You'd like them to speak Spanish based on a lot of the collection of this team. But they want someone, and he mentioned passion a lot, that like injects that energy back into the player's experience, which will then inject it back into the club. And that's the thing about Frank de Boer that they got very wrong. And that they have to find a way to say, yeah, we want to develop players and sell them. Yeah, we want to help with the academy. Yeah, we need to bring South American players in and make them feel comfortable. All of that matters, but I think the number one thing is just the like feel around the experience.
And they got to get the roster right, by the way. I mean, Julian Gressel, gone. Nagbe, gone. Hector Villalba had kind of gotten frozen out, but he's quality. You know he is. He's gone. So, like, this team is not as good as the team that Tata had. And then you've got to rectify the two. You got to get the right manager. You got to get Joseph back and healthy and productive. You got to get Pity and Barco doing what you paid them, their clubs, I should say, and them big money to do, and go from there. Atlanta United, big expectations. We'll see if they can pay off on those. Inter Miami, brand new. Got their first win. Did it against Orlando City. This is why I'm not reading too far into the MLS's back tournament all the time. I mean,
wow, he's already out on his own team.
I know. I liked it. I liked it from Orlando, but I wasn't going to crown him. I said they still maybe got a big gap between, like, you know, competing for MLS Cup and what they did in Orlando.
Too brute over here.
Dude, I know, man. Turn around. I'll stick you right in the kidney. Beware. Beware. Julian Carranza with a brace. He looked good. We've kind of dumped on him a little bit, saying maybe he isn't as good as we thought he was, but he looked darn good in this game. And then Rodolfo Pizarro, he's class, and he knows how to celebrate a goal. He knows how to celebrate a goal. I want to see more of that creative juice flowing in MLS. You don't got fans in the stands. How can you make this special? What did you guys see from this game? Doyle, what was your takeaway?
Orlando City got punished for midfield sloppiness that they did not exhibit at all last month during the tournament. If you look at both of the first two goals that Miami scored, they came off of just unconscionable midfield giveaways from Sebastian Mendez, who was played out of position. Oscar Pereira got that wrong from the start by playing Mendez as a right winger with Urso and Ori Russell in deep midfield. And like, Sebastian Mendez is a good player. I think he showed a lot of that in the second half. He, when he plays a more circumscribed and familiar role, that number 8 box-to-box ball winner role, I think he's been a lot better this year. Even though he did have one bad giveaway, I think it was against Philadelphia. I think he's been a lot better this year than he was in the past. But if you put him in the attack, he starts thinking that he's Iniesta, and he's not. And Miami were all over that. So they and this was Diego Alonso being a pragmatist. We've talked about Diego Alonso a decent amount and like trying to pin down what his teams have done. And what his teams have done is always just play the style that gets them results, whether it was Monterrey, or before that with Pachuca. And in this case, they drew a pretty low line and they said, okay, flood the midfield and transition quickly whenever Mendez is on the ball, because that's going to be our chance. And then the other part about it was, like you said, Carranza maybe got a little more stick than he deserved.
He was hurt. Yeah, he was hurt for a long. He was transitioning, and he's like 20 years old.
Yeah. He put in 2 finishes that were the finishes of a $6 million striker. There was proof of concept there now with Julian Carranza in terms of putting the ball in the back. Like, that's what you pay that kind of money for. So it was good in all those kinds of ways. I thought, central defense was better with the addition of LGP, even though he got sent to the weight room by my guy, Daryl DK. But they looked like a more competent team. They also looked like a team that'll improve with the addition of Blas Matuidi and maybe one other DP in the attack.
Can we just say that the shot that Daryl DK hit before he scored his goal might have been the hardest hit shot I've ever seen in my life? Like, you blink, my God, you blink and you miss that thing. I mean, it was like, I pity the goalkeeper that has to put his hands up just to protect his nose in that situation. But
he's going to get a shot. Santiago Patino's gone. Dom Dwyer's out. Like, he is one of 2 options, pretty much. Maybe 3 with Michel or the Brazilian coming in. But that's the position of need for Orlando, and he's going to get a chance there, which is pretty cool to see, because Calen has been talking about trusting young players and giving them opportunities for years.
Calen's a big player, kids guy, yeah.
So this is a good opportunity.
Yeah, the story for me, though, in this match is still about Pizarro. And I just think when they've looked bad, he's looked good. When they've looked good, he's looked great. Like, he has been good for them consistently throughout his play in MLS. And there were some questions around him and whether he was the right signing when he came into MLS. But he's been more involved in, like, on the end of things in goal scoring production and assists than I was even expecting. And I would say, look, when you add Matuidi and as support behind him, I think we might actually see it better from Pizarro, because
I agree with you.
He's going to get put into better spots. And yeah, I think you guys are right. Maybe the number 9 where, Carranza does well, but it's really Pizarro who's the one who supplies him with that first one, where he drives right at, lays it off, puts people in good spots, and then finishes the action himself. So he's been one of the better, attacking midfielders in MLS so far this year.
And look, we just spent a lot of time on Atlanta and Miami. They're going to play Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's TSN 2, MLS Live, ESPN Plus, Fox Sports South. If you're in Atlanta or down in Miami, you got your local TV as well. Ray Hudson doing his thing. Magisterio for the header for Julian Carranza.
Terrible, by the way. Come on, Weeby.
What?
Don't try and imitate the god. Come on.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll just walk away from this one with my head down real quick. And I guess we'll transition that way in my shame, just bathed in it, to Toronto FC. I mean, is this the best team in the Eastern Conference, or is any team that gets to play Vancouver twice a week the best team in whatever conference they happen to be?
Definitely the best team in League One Ontario, or whatever it is they're playing in right now.
Oh, boy.
I mean, look, Pablo Piatti this was the big question for them, right? And I don't want to belabor this one. I think we can be pretty quick here. And I think that's the story right now is Pablo Piatti. We knew they had depth. We knew they had quality. They've shown it to us year after year now, except for that one blip post-CCL. The way they've built this team is impressive. The quality they have is impressive. The depth they have is impressive. They needed another difference maker on the wing. And right now, Pablo Piatti really seems to be that. Now, the knock might be that he might get injured next week, but they've got a couple guys like that.
I mean, Pablo Piatti's making a difference. Richie Laryea is making a difference. Nick DeLeon is back scoring. Golazo is making a difference. They have a ton of depth. I thought one of the bigger stories from this 2-game series, like, they beat the Whitecaps, so you don't want to read too much into it. But one of the bigger stories is that Liam Fraser came in that second game, and he was excellent. They need to find minutes for this kid, whether it's as that number 8, he played over Marky Delgado, whether it's as that role or, playing in front of Michael Bradley, who's, Michael Bradley isn't the player he was 3 years ago, and his name should, Taquito just ate my microphone. By
the way, Taquito's been all up in zone 14 behind you. My God. Like, this whole show, just double pause in zone 14.
He is Diego Chara right now. He's just all over you. Foul after foul after foul, but he's smiling about it. But no, I mean, there's a lot there. They were the best team in the Eastern Conference last year, and now they have more depth at center forward. Now they have arrested Alejandro Pozuelo, and as I see it, now they really only have one question mark, and that's our Omar Gonzalez. Oh my, he's gonna rip this computer right off the thing. Our Omar Gonzalez and Chris.
Someone needs to yellow card him. Have the strength right now, because you're letting him take over the game.
Persistent infringement on Taquito. Our Omar Gonzalez and Chris Mavinga are going to be one of the best center back pairings in the league. I thought they were at times last year, but so far in 2020, it really has been a question mark.
We will see. Toronto FC, nice week for them. Sitting atop those standings in Canada, of course, that goes both regular season as well as Canadian Championship.
They knocked Vancouver off the dais. They get their jersey up because of the week they had. Congratulations.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize we were calling that the dais.
Yeah, I didn't know what to call it. It's really my kitchen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
Although most Americans would not recognize it as a human being's kitchen. It is a kitchen.
What's one other thing you noticed from this weekend? And let's see. Dave, let's start with you. What did you notice from the weekend we have not touched?
Well, we haven't touched Darlington Nagbe scoring one of the best goals. It's the goal of the year already. You're welcome.
You did touch it?
You talked about his goal in 2011. You didn't talk about his goal this time, but it was amazing. Incredible shot. Nagbe's capable of these things, and that's like a minuscule part of his game. He dominates the game on the ball. He controls the flow of the game. He's perfectly comfortable in his role right now in Columbus. The other two things I'd mentioned about the Crew, and obviously I was really high on them going into MLS's back. I thought they played well, even though they got knocked out earlier than expected. One is Jonathan Mensah has to be in the early conversation for Defender of the Year. He's been a rock for them at center back. He's so clean on the ball on top of all the things he does. It's a revolving door at center back next to him, and he still gets it done. And the other is Mokhtar, I thought, was very good for them when he played early in this season. And it seems like he's going to be out for a while because they've made a couple moves to try and fill that spot. And I was a little worried about it. And I think the return at a high level of Milton Valenzuela can be what covers them for that. His ability to get forward and attack from the left back spot kind of covers them from not having a game changer there 1v1. And I started to see it. We've talked about him for a year and a half, hoping he'd come back. I started to see it this week, and that's exciting for the Crew.
And look, this was a game without Lucas Zelarayan, and they dominated it. It was all them. The Crew are for real. We knew that, but this is further proof. I'm going to throw this one out there, and I'm going to go Hudson River Derby. Because I did instant replay, because we led with the, I don't know if it's sketchiness on video review, but I mean, raise your hands here. How many of you thought that was clearly and obviously over the line, that goal? Anybody?
Nobody's hands are going up.
I mean, no, come on. There's no angle for that. Unless Alan Chabin and Jose Carlos Rivero had a different angle than we saw on the broadcast. And like right now, we're seeing the same thing that they're seeing on the screens. It's the way it's working. I just cannot see how you can award that a goal. Now, maybe Sean Johnson's got to catch the ball.
Yeah, so he does. But let me ask you this. So when Sean Johnson puts it on the ground with one hand on the ball, is that considered control of the ball? Is it one hand or is it two?
I think that's control, and I think the referees said it was control because they called it a foul. That was the original call on the field. Okay. Foul on Danny Royer, basically kicking the ball in. This was a bizarre episode here. I don't. In my mind, it can't be a goal, and Sean John, I'm sure, would have loved for that to be the case, but that wasn't the case. Red Bulls with a 1-0 win in the New York Derby, and the NYCFC got to be concerned, man. They got to be concerned. They're sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. I think they play the Crew tonight, Monday night, so we won't preview that. But you mentioned in the rundown meeting, Doyle, and you're absolutely correct, that this is a huge game for them. Every game now is. This was a team that was supposed to be the team they were last year, but better, and they are far, far worse right now. Doyle, what'd you take away? What's something we haven't talked about that you want to jump in real quick?
Sporting KC going to mighty Minnesota.
The Fortress.
And getting a well-deserved win over a Loons team that we know
are the favorites in everything they do.
Can really lock you up, right? That Minnesota defense throughout, even without Ike Opara, throughout the MLS's back tournament, they found ways to shut down everybody basically except Orlando City. And with Peter Vermees blew my mind by starting Gianluca Busio as a number 6. Busio has been a number 10 or kind of an attacking winger throughout his youth career and throughout his minutes with Sporting KC, I've never been particularly impressed by him, to be blunt. He was awesome in this game. His ability to, ping those long diagonals, like not just to feet, but into space to give. It was particularly Jalen Lindsey on the left getting forward and like getting the ball in stride as he was pushing up. That was a revelation to me. But then also, for the most part, he was making all the plays that you need a number 6 to make. He was covering ground. He was cutting off passing lanes. He was, winning a lot of his duels. I mean, Ethan Finley stiff-armed him one time and down he went. But like, it was a hell of a performance from the kid. It was a real eye-opener. And it wasn't just that. It was the fact that he was so composed, along with Roger Espinoza and Gadi Kinda in central midfield, that they were able to get on the ball. They were able to send both fullbacks forward. And then Alan Polito was able to drop back into that midfield trio and make it a midfield quartet. And he was able to start playmaking. And that's what really pulled Minnesota apart and gave Sporting Kansas City the room to run, the room to get goals, and a very deserved win, and why they're top of the Western Conference now.
15 points right now, 5 wins in 6 games. Kalen Carr was just loving it. Loving the Busio to Jalen Lindsey, play your kids connection. Kalen, anything from this weekend that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? Maybe you want to talk about Colorado just again for the 10th year in a row, maybe 11 or even 12, not showing up for the Rocky Mountain Cup. I mean, come on, guys, where you at?
Yeah, that one's frustrating. I still think when I really stop and think about this season so far, NYCFC is still probably the biggest shock for me on 3 points, 6 games played. But let's stay positive. I'll go back to the Sounders. How
did we not talk more about this? Producer Anders is going to kill us.
Yeah, I had to do our Predict 6 predictions. BetMGM, I believe, is the sponsor of that.
That is correct.
And I picked the Sounders in that one, and I felt good about it because I think we didn't see their best necessarily in Orlando, and bringing back João Paulo into the lineup, I think he's good. And then Rui Diaz, I mean, he's a killer. So some good stuff from Jordan Morris. I saw Matt pull a nice little touch from him on social media.
Dude, when he made that touch, can we just pause? I hit the back 15 seconds button on MLS Live because I was like, no chance that this was a mistouch.
No, he saw him.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was, and it came off like a 20-pass buildup too. Like that would have been one of the goals. That would have been the goal of the season if Rui Diaz had finished that one. He finished harder ones later in the game, though.
Insane. But yeah, Sounders, I think, second just behind Sporting right now in the West. And I think have a chance to, as they get healthy and get going, I think they can make a run at the Supporter Shield.
Kalen, did you see anything in their central defense, Seattle, because it was so poor last month at the tournament? But they weren't. I didn't think they were great against Portland, but they looked more competent.
Yeah, they look stronger, and I think there's still some questions around that center back position. And so, but having a midfield in front of them and having it functioning will save them a lot, I think, to be able to give them a little bit of protect and shield, and then ask Arriaga to put out a couple fires when needed. I think he's a good player. He's made some mistakes and is prone to a big error or two, but I think more often than not, he will get on the right side of those equations. And they're going to need him to. If the Sounders really want to make a run towards the Supporter Shield or win, go back and defend their title, Arriaga is going to have to be their main center back that they can lean on and trust in those big moments of matches.
But got to get back healthy.
Real quick, credit to producer Anders, who was talking before the show. Shout out, Anders. João Paulo, I thought, was good in this game. He can be better, but I feel like a lot of the errors that Arriaga makes that Kalen's talking about are on the ball. And then it kind of mentally, he doesn't get over it. So if you take away some of his role of playing out of the back by playing through João Paulo and having that ability, you lessen the chances that he's going to make that mistake and then lose his mind throughout the rest of the game.
I think Arriaga is the third center back at this point. I don't think it's. I think what we saw from
Gomez Andrade to me is he's the rock.
And
Yeah.
O'Neal.
No. That's not what we're talking about. It's Shane O'Neal.
Can O'Neal actually stand up and be a starting center back? It's a big question, but I think it might be a bigger question for Arriaga at this point.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I think you're right on Andrade.
What we're saying at this, I guess, is that there are still questions for Seattle.
Yeah, look, this is as uncertain as it has ever been in recent history for the Seattle Sounders at center back, and that's what happens when you have Chad Marshall for a decade. Like, when you lose Chad Marshall, that was a benefit that literally nobody else in the league was getting for that period of time, both in play, longevity, and leadership. So, big win for the Sounders. Meanwhile, Giovanni Savarese is saying we got some thinking to do after MLS is back and then taking this result on the chin. Let us know what you think. Timbers fans, let's get to the mailbag, 401-206-0MLS. Here's an email subject without any context. Quote, former MLS player Devin Kurtz releases new self-love mantra single, Best Friends. This was a PR pitch sent to us. I have never, and I pride myself on knowing a lot of random obscure MLS players, I have never heard of Devin Kurtz in my life. So I want to know if you guys have heard of Devin Kurtz, and I want to know why Devin Kurtz is advertising himself as a professional soccer player.
It's a good hustle.
Yeah.
Right?
There's probably a lot of games where there's no books left. Maybe he played in the reserve league. Maybe he's in the reserve league.
Maybe. Like,
the person to ask is Rick Laws. Rick will know.
I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
Okay. My assumption is he went on a trip to Guadalajara with Chivas USA one time.
Yeah, right.
Got a jersey.
Haven't we all? I mean, but yeah, if I had $1 for every time I heard a story of like a girlfriend texting me being like, I met this guy on the Chicago Fire out at the club. He's from Ireland, and I'd be like, what? We don't have an Irish guy on our team.
Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney.
Wow.
Scottish.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, either way. Email subject with context. This time it's about the New York City over Portland food debate. Quote, it's not often I take umbrage with Matt Doyle, but this is Damian Smith, and you'll be happy to know, Doyle, that he wrote an essay about why you were wrong. But the payoff for all of us here is that he has offered the next time you or any of the Extra Time crew come to Portland to cover a Timbers game, he says he'll take us out for brunch, lunch, and dinner so that we can see that he's right. And when he takes us out, we'll realize that the food scene in Portland is chronically underrated, way cheaper, better, more innovative, less full of itself than New York City. That's what he says.
Doyle out here last Monday, Doyle pulled the pin out, dropped the grenade at our feet, and just walked away for a week.
Yeah.
And I get open the mailbag on Thursday, and it is chaos, and people are furious at Matt Doyle. Well played, Doyle. Well played.
Portlander. Oh, yes. Portland's a nice, tiny little town with a few good restaurants and some good farm-to-table stuff. Beer is not food. And the food in New York is better and more diverse. And I don't think anybody can really dispute that. But I'm happy to go out and eat elk burgers or whatever it is that they have in Portland with this guy.
Oh, just playing it. Just all right. What do we got? Dave, take us through.
FC Dallas. We got questions on their attack. We got one from Hank in Salt Lake City, which is convenient for him. He says, is FC Dallas's offense so broken it can't be fixed in 2020?
No. The first 70 minutes against Houston, they were terrible. They generated only 2 shots. Then they brought in Pamacall and Cervania, and they dominated the final 20 minutes of the game. They generated 5 shots. Pamacall's ability to get on the ball and advance Dallas into the final third, either via the dribble or via combination play or just through balls, it can't be replicated in that squad. And the Brian Acosta's not doing it. Jesus Ferreira has looked kind of lost, playing either as a playmaker or kind of as an inverted winger a little bit. And Thiago Santos, the Brazilian, he's supposed to be kind of a regista they brought in, and he looked like it. He hasn't been able to find those passing lanes. And then when Dallas have gotten to the final third, the patterns of movement haven't been in there. So there's a lot going wrong. There's always a lot going wrong when you've been shut out in 3 straight games. But when Pamacall and Cervania came on, it was night and day. And it has to be, if those guys are 100% healthy, then Lucio Gonzalez has to say, okay, the best players are going to are going to play. And I think that when those two guys are in the midfield, it'll look a lot different for Dallas. But at the same time, he has to be ruthless about Franco Jara as well. Franco Jara's taken minutes from Zdenek Andrasic at this point, and he shouldn't be. Andrasic's just a better player than Franco Jara, who has repeatedly been in good spots and repeatedly failed to either finish or connect the type of passes that you need to connect to play as a functional number 9 in this league.
Open question for me. What is the rest of 2020 like for Paxton Pomykal? Do they have this minutes restriction, quote unquote, from third degree on him because they want to sell him? Do they have it on him because of all the health issues? Is there a time where he becomes a starter again? Will he be gone in the summer? I mean, there's just a lot of questions to ask around him. And you said it, Doyle. He is a key for this team.
Gus, recall, bring back Edwin Cerrillo.
Woo!
Let's go.
Edwin Cerrillo won a goal this weekend.
Banging goals for North Texas.
Kalen just watching USL League One exclusively all weekend. Came on here, lied about MLS for the last hour and a half. Didn't even watch a game. It's all about USL League One. And guess what? We had
USL, man. That's where it's happening. Let's make it. Let's keep it going.
We had a disparaging comment about Kalen that I'm not going to read anymore.
No, but now I want to read it because I feel like Kalen.
Go.
You had such a strong show, Calen, that I feel you're prepared for this. This is from RVH in the YouTube comments. He's a legend there. He fights the good fight. He was a big fan of Munch to the Match with you, Dave. So he says it's a perfect fit. Knock it out of the park. This one is for Calen, though. He says all last year he was begging for more Carr. Now Carr is in a long slump, in his opinion. He crossed from sometimes aloof to disinterested, and the quality of his tapes has dipped. So last year, not a huge Davies fan, but he's the most improved and now has the title for best former player on ETR. Step up your game, Calen.
I will take that to heart. And what's this gentleman's name? Just so I can.
It's RVH. I don't know what his name is.
Okay, I'll keep it. I think it's fair. I think it's honestly, it's a fair criticism. I would say the restart and the long breaks have hurt me in some ways. I have not been in a rhythm. I have not been in the studio as much as I was last year, watching Doyle break things down at the board. So it's I'm not blaming the tacticals.
No, Anders makes a good point. We have played you in a lot of different positions. You've been.
I mean, I've switched from Thursdays to Mondays, and I've traveled to California and back. Yeah, it's been difficult, but I'm going to take that from RVH, and I'd like to recommit my dedication to him and the show from here on out.
Any press conference questions you have for us? I mean, that was beautiful. I felt like I was right back in the Houston Dynamo locker room with a microphone in your face, Calen. That was just wonderful.
Oh, boy. Anders just gave Calen a vote of confidence. He said, we stand behind Calen's. I think Calen's about to get traded to the call-up, guys. I think that's what just happened.
No, I'm the final word here, and I veto any and all producer Anders.
Happy to take a week off too if you think that would help for my.
Hey, we'll see you training tomorrow. All right.
Or is this a PT situation, and me and Weeby are the problems, and we have to go to allow Calen to enjoy his game once again and release?
We'll leave that up to the listeners. 401-206-0MLS. Extra time at MLSsoccer.com. Big thanks to Felipe Cardenas for joining us.
We'll reach out to Dom Kinnear to get all the pointers of how to get the best.
Dom Kinnear can host this show, to be honest with you. Bring back the mullet, Dom. We'll see you on Thursday, everybody.